Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine you are standing at the edge of something. Not a cliff, not a canyon, not a mountain range stretching to the horizon. Something far older, far darker, and far more terrifying than any of those things. Imagine the surface of the Pacific Ocean at night. Completely black, completely still. Not a single sound except the slow movement of water beneath you. And now, imagine what lies directly beneath your feet, 7 miles down, in total darkness, under pressure so extreme it would crush a military submarine like a paper cup. Most people assume that place is empty, that the deepest point on the surface of our entire planet is nothing more than a cold, featureless void, too hostile for anything to exist, too remote for anything to matter, a dead place at the bottom of a dead world. And that is what scientists assumed for most of human history, and that assumption was wrong. In March of 2025, a team of researchers published findings in one of the most prestigious scientific journals on Earth. What they discovered at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, alive, structured, and completely unlike anything ever documented on the surface of this planet, stopped the entire marine biology community cold. And just 4 months after that, in July of 2025, a submersible dove nearly 10 kilometers below the ocean's surface and found something that no scientist had ever seen at that depth before. Not microbes, not sediment, not traces of organic material drifting down from above. An entire living community, thousands of animals feeding, reproducing, thriving, in a place that, by every law of physics and biology, should be completely, utterly, and permanently dead. What is happening at the bottom of the Mariana Trench right now is one of the most extraordinary scientific stories of our time, and almost no one is talking about it. This is the story of the Mariana Trench, and nothing about it is normal. Let's start with where it is, because the location alone is already unsettling. The Mariana Trench sits in the western Pacific Ocean, roughly 2,000 miles southwest of Hawaii and about 120 miles east of the Mariana Islands, a chain of volcanic islands that most people have never heard of. If you were to look at a map of the Pacific, you might struggle to find it. It doesn't look like much, just a thin crescent-shaped line carved into the ocean floor. But that line is where the Earth opens up. And the trench was formed by a process called subduction, where one enormous tectonic plate slides beneath another, slowly, over millions of years, dragging the ocean floor downward into the Earth's interior. The Pacific Plate and the Mariana Plate have been locked in this geological collision for tens of millions of years. And the result of that slow, grinding pressure is the deepest wound on the surface of our entire planet. The Mariana Trench stretches roughly 1,500 miles in length, about the same distance as driving from New York City to Denver, but it's the depth that makes it unlike anything else on Earth. At its deepest point, a specific location within the trench known as the Challenger Deep. The ocean floor sits approximately 10,984 meters below the surface. Let that settle for a moment. Nearly 11 kilometers straight down. To put that in terms that might actually mean something to you, if you took Mount Everest, the tallest mountain on the surface of the Earth, standing 8,849 meters above sea level, and you dropped it into the Challenger Deep, its summit would still be submerged under more than 2,000 meters of water. You could stack Everest inside the Mariana Trench and still not reach the surface. And the Challenger Deep is not just the deepest point in the trench. It is the deepest point on the entire planet. There is no natural feature on this Earth, or as far as we know, on any body in our solar system that has been explored, that goes further below its surface than this place. This is the bottom of the world. Now, here is where it starts to get strange. The Mariana Trench was not discovered recently. It has been known to science since 1875, when a British survey ship called HMS Challenger lowered a weighted-sounding line into the water and measured a depth so extreme that the crew initially thought their instruments had malfunctioned. They had not. What they found that day was a depth so incomprehensible that it would take humanity nearly another century just to send anything down there to confirm what they had measured. But here is what is extraordinary. In the 150 years since that discovery, we have learned remarkably little about what actually exists at the bottom. We have sent humans to the moon 6 times. We have landed robotic explorers on Mars. We have photographed galaxies billions of light years away. We have mapped the surface of Venus, a planet wrapped in clouds of sulfuric acid, more thoroughly than we have mapped the floor of our own ocean. As of today, fewer than 25 people in all of recorded human history have physically reached the Challenger Deep. That number is smaller than the number of people who have walked on the surface of the moon, far smaller than the number of people who have climbed Everest, which now stands at well over 6,000 summits. Think about what that means. We live on a planet that is 71% ocean. The ocean covers more of this Earth than all of its continents combined, and the deepest part of that ocean, the place we know the least about, sits right here on our own world. Less than 7 miles beneath the surface of a sea we have been sailing for thousands of years. We are, in the most literal sense, strangers to our own planet. So why haven't we explored it? Why, with all of modern technology, have so few humans ever reached the bottom of the Mariana Trench? The answer is pressure. At the surface of the ocean, the atmosphere pushes down on you with what scientists call one atmosphere of pressure. You don't feel it because your body has evolved over millions of years to exist at exactly this pressure. It is the baseline of your biology. At 100 meters depth, roughly the limit of recreational scuba diving, the pressure is already 10 times what it is at the surface. Your body can be trained to tolerate this, with the right equipment, the right gases, the right preparation. At 1,000 meters, barely 1/10 of the way to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the pressure is 100 times that at the surface. No human diver has ever reached this depth without a pressurized vessel. The water would crush an unprotected human body in seconds. Now imagine going 11 times deeper than that. At the Challenger Deep, the pressure is approximately 1,086 times the pressure at sea level. In more concrete terms, every single square inch of any surface down there, any surface at all, is bearing a weight equivalent to roughly 8 tons per square inch. That is the equivalent of 50 commercial airplanes stacked on top of a space the size of your hand. There is no material on Earth that is simply sitting around waiting to be used that could survive that without specific engineering. Steel deforms, conventional glass implodes, most polymers fail. Even titanium, one of the strongest metals we use in engineering, has to be formed into specific shapes, typically spheres, to distribute that pressure evenly enough to survive. This is why the engineering required to reach the Challenger Deep is genuinely comparable to the engineering required to send a spacecraft to Mars. In some ways it is harder because the forces involved are compressive rather than the vacuum of space, and compression is in many ways more unforgiving. A spacecraft hull that develops a small crack in the vacuum of space will leak slowly. A submarine hull that develops a crack at 11 kilometers depth will implode, not leak, implode. The ocean will crush it inward in a fraction of a second, with a force so total that the destruction is essentially instantaneous. This is the environment that scientists are trying to study. And yet, impossibly, life is there. Not just microbial life tucked into sediment, not just traces of organic material drifting down from the surface world, actual, complex, structured life, creatures with bodies, creatures with behaviors, creatures that, by every right of physics and biology, should not exist, and yet have been living in the darkness of the Challenger Deep for millions of years, long before the first human being ever stood upright on the surface of this Earth. In March of 2025, a team of scientists published findings that sent shockwaves through the marine biology community. Their research, published in the journal Cell, one of the most prestigious scientific publications on the planet, revealed that the hadal zone, the deepest region of the ocean beginning at 6,000 meters, is host to an ecosystem of breathtaking complexity. They found microbial species so new to science that 89.4% of them had never been documented before. Not rare, not unusual, completely unknown to humanity until that moment. They found that these organisms had evolved in ways so specialized, so utterly unlike anything seen at the surface, that the rules governing their biology had to be studied from scratch. So some had developed streamlined genomes, stripped down to the absolute essentials, to survive with minimal energy in a place where food is almost impossibly scarce. Others had developed flexible, adaptive genomes that allowed them to shift their biology in response to changing conditions in the deep. And then, just a few months later, in July of 2025, a Chinese research submersible made a discovery that pushed the boundaries even further. Scientists aboard the submersible Fendouge, whose name translates to striver, observed something that had never been seen before at those depths. Thousands of tube worms, thousands of bivalves, an entire colony of complex multicellular animals living nearly 10 kilometers below the surface. The deepest animal community ever recorded in human history. Alive, feeding, reproducing, thriving in what we had long assumed was one of the most lifeless places on Earth. We are going to spend the next several chapters going deep into what the Mariana Trench actually is, layer by layer, mile by mile, discovery by discovery. We are going to meet the creatures that live there, understand the forces that shaped it, trace the history of every human attempt to reach its bottom, and examine what the latest science is telling us about a place that continues to defy everything we thought we knew. Because the deeper we look, the stranger it gets. And the strangest part of all, and the part that keeps scientists awake at night, is not what we have found in the Mariana Trench. It is what we still haven't. If this is the kind of story that makes you lean forward, if this is the kind of mystery that you want to sit with, turn over in your mind, and follow all the way down into the dark, then stay with us. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we are just getting started, and the next few chapters are going to take you somewhere very few humans have ever been. Before we reach the Mariana Trench, we have to get there. And getting there means passing through 5 worlds. 5 completely separate environments, each one more hostile than the last. 5 layers of ocean stacked on top of each other, each with its own rules, its own darkness, its own version of what life is allowed to look like. And with every layer you pass through, the world you came from grows further away, until eventually the surface of the Earth becomes something you can no longer even imagine. Think of it this way: most people who have ever lived and died on this planet have never seen anything beyond the first layer. Even most marine scientists spend their entire careers studying only the top fraction of what the ocean actually contains. And the deep ocean, everything below 200 meters, represents roughly 95% of the total living space available to life on Earth. 95%. And we have explored less than 20% of it. What follows is a descent, zone by zone, floor by floor, from the world you know, sunlit, warm, familiar, all the way down to a place so remote, so impossibly far from everything you have ever experienced, that the scientists who have been there describe it not as part of our planet, but as something else entirely. This is how you get to the bottom of the world. Zone 1, the sunlit zone, depth 0 to 200 meters. Scientific name, the epipelagic zone. The first 200 meters of the ocean are, in every meaningful sense, the only part of the ocean that most life on Earth has ever known. Kim, this is where sunlight reaches. This is where photosynthesis happens. This is where the foundation of the entire ocean food chain, microscopic plants called phytoplankton, convert sunlight into energy, feeding everything from tiny zooplankton to the largest animals that have ever existed on this planet. Blue whales feed here, dolphins hunt here, tuna, marlin, mako sharks, sea turtles, the animals that most people picture when they think of the ocean. All of them live out their entire lives within this narrow band of water, at the very top of a system that extends nearly 11 kilometers below them. The sunlit zone is warm near the surface, well mixed by wind and waves, and rich in nutrients carried up from below by ocean currents. At its very bottom, around 150 to 200 meters down, you hit something called the thermocline, a sharp boundary where the temperature drops suddenly and dramatically, marking the transition between the warm, productive surface ocean and everything that lies beneath. Cross the thermocline and the sunlight begins to fail. Cross it and you are no longer in the ocean most people know. You are beginning the descent. Zone 2, the twilight zone. Depth, 200 to 1,000 meters. Scientific name, the mesopelagic zone. At 200 meters, the light does not disappear all at once. It fades. Slowly, over the next several hundred meters, blue becomes darker blue, then blue-gray, then something that is barely light at all. A dim, diffuse glow that exists only as a suggestion of the world above. By 500 meters, there is not enough light for photosynthesis. Nothing can grow here from sunlight alone. By 1,000 meters, there is effectively no light at all. This is the twilight zone, and it is one of the most biologically strange environments on Earth. The animals that live here have had to solve a problem that no surface creature has ever faced. How do you survive in a world where light exists, but not enough to see by, and where the darkness below is so complete that your only choices are to adapt to the dim or disappear into the black? The answer, in almost every case, is bioluminescence. Roughly 80% of all animals living in the twilight zone produce their own light. Not reflected light, not light borrowed from the sun, their own biological, internally generated light, cold fire produced by chemical reactions inside their bodies. The lanternfish, one of the most numerous vertebrates on Earth by sheer volume of biomass, uses rows of bioluminescent organs along its belly to match the faint glow from above, a trick called counter-illumination that makes it nearly invisible to predators hunting from below. The firefly squid, no larger than your hand, pulses with electric blue light across its entire body. The stoplight loose-jaw fish, one of the more unsettling residents of this zone, produces red bioluminescence that it uses like a private flashlight, hunting in wavelengths of light its prey cannot even detect. Something else happens in the twilight zone that most people do not know about. Every single night, billions of animals, fish, squid, jellyfish, crustaceans, migrate upward from the depths toward the surface to feed under the cover of darkness, and then descend again before sunrise. This daily vertical migration is the largest coordinated animal movement on Earth, happening across every ocean simultaneously, every single night, completely invisible to anyone on the surface. It is one of the most extraordinary phenomena on this planet, and almost no one has heard of it. At 1,000 meters, the last suggestion of surface light disappears. The door closes. Zone 3, the midnight zone. Depth, 1,000 to 4,000 meters. Scientific name, the bathypelagic zone. There is no gentle transition here. The midnight zone begins where the last photon of sunlight ends, at exactly 1,000 meters, and from that point forward there is no light at all. Not dim light, not blue light, not a trace, nothing. And the temperature in the midnight zone stabilizes at around 4 degrees Celsius, just above freezing, and stays there. There are no seasons here, no storms, no variation caused by weather or climate or the turning of the Earth. The midnight zone is one of the most stable environments on this planet, unchanged for millions of years, utterly isolated from everything happening at the surface. The pressure at the top of this zone is already 100 times what it is at the surface. By the time you reach 4,000 meters, it has climbed to 400 times surface pressure. The animals here are, by any reasonable standard, monsters. The anglerfish, one of the most recognized creatures of the deep, hunts in complete darkness using a bioluminescent lure that dangles from a modified spine above its head, drawing prey toward a mouth filled with long, translucent teeth designed to grip and not release. Its jaw is hinged in a way that allows it to swallow prey larger than its own body. Its stomach stretches, its body is built entirely around the problem of eating whatever comes within reach, because in the midnight zone, meals are rare, and you cannot afford to let one escape. The giant squid, one of the largest invertebrates on Earth, reaching lengths of up to 13 meters, hunts somewhere in this zone, though we know almost nothing about how. We have never observed a giant squid alive in its natural habitat at depth. Everything we know about it comes from dead specimens washed ashore, or from the deep scars found on the skin of sperm whales, which dive to these depths specifically to hunt them, sperm whales. And the largest toothed predators on Earth, diving to over 1,000 meters on a single breath, navigating in total darkness using echolocation, hunting an animal they cannot see. In the midnight zone, this is what normal looks like. Zone 4, the abyss. Depth, 4,000 to 6,000 meters. Scientific name, the abyssopelagic zone. The word abyss comes from the ancient Greek, meaning without bottom. For most of human history, people believed the deep ocean was exactly that. A void with no floor, a darkness that went on forever. They were wrong, but it is easy to understand why they thought it. The abyssal zone covers roughly 80% of the total ocean floor. It is, in every practical sense, the default bottom of the ocean, a vast, a featureless plain of sediment stretching across the seafloor of most of the world's oceans, covered in a fine layer of material that has been raining down from above for millions of years. Dead plankton, fecal matter, the remnants of organisms from every zone above, slowly drifting downward in what scientists call marine snow. A continuous, silent, slow-motion blizzard of organic material falling through the darkness. This is what most of the deep-sea floor looks like: flat, gray, silent, almost entirely without the dramatic geological features that make the Mariana Trench so unusual. The pressure here reaches 600 times the pressure at the surface. The temperature is just above freezing, and has been for millions of years. There is no light, there is almost no food, and the animals that live here, sea cucumbers that vacuum organic material from the sediment, giant single-celled organisms called Xenophyophores that can grow to 4 inches across, making them the largest single cells on Earth, sparse populations of sea spiders and polychaete worms, have reduced themselves to the minimum requirements for survival. They are not thriving, they are enduring. And yet, even here, in this vast silent plain at the bottom of most of the world's ocean, the Mariana Trench has not even started yet. Zone 5, the hadal zone, depth 6,000 to 11,000 meters, scientific name. The hadal pelagic zone, at 6,000 meters, the abyssal plain ends and the earth opens up. The hadal zone, named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld, exists only in the deepest ocean trenches. It does not occur across the broad floor of the ocean. It occurs only where the ocean floor itself has been torn open by tectonic forces, creating narrow, impossibly deep valleys in the rock below. There are 46 known hadal environments on Earth. The vast majority are in the Pacific Ocean. And the deepest of all is the Mariana Trench, which descends from the edge of the abyssal zone at 6,000 meters all the way to the Challenger Deep at nearly 11,000 meters, 5 kilometers further into the Earth than any other trench on the planet. The pressure at the Challenger Deep is 1,086 times the pressure at the surface. The water temperature hovers between 1 and 4 degrees Celsius. There is no sunlight, no moon, no weather, no current from above. And the only energy entering the system from outside comes from the slow rain of marine snow drifting down from zones 4, 5, 6, 7,000 meters above, and from the Earth itself, because scattered across the floor of the hadal zone, heated by the geological activity of the tectonic plates below, are hydrothermal vents, cracks in the rock through which superheated mineral-rich water escapes from the planet's interior. These vents are the key to everything. They are the reason the hadal zone is not simply a dead pit at the bottom of the world. They are the reason something is alive down there at all. And what is alive down there? What has been living there, in that darkness, under that pressure, for millions of years before the first human being ever walked this Earth, is what we are going to explore in the next chapter. Because the creatures of the hadal zone do not follow the rules that govern life everywhere else on this planet. They never have. We need to establish something before we go any further. Every living thing on this planet, every plant, every animal, every organism of any kind that you have ever seen, read about, or encountered in your entire life has been shaped by the same fundamental forces. Sunlight, oxygen, moderate pressure, temperatures that fall within a relatively narrow range. These are the conditions under which life on Earth evolved. These are the conditions that 3.5 billion years of biology have been built around. The creatures of the hadal zone were built around none of them. They exist under pressures that would flatten any surface organism in an instant. They live in permanent darkness, in near-freezing temperatures, in a world where food is so scarce that most surface animals would starve to death within days. They have been cut off from the surface world, effectively sealed inside the trench by the crushing pressure gradient above them, for millions of years, evolving in isolation from every other ecosystem on Earth. What they have become is not simply a variation on the life we know, it is something else. The hadal snailfish Pseudoliparis swirei. Let us begin with the animal that, until recently, most scientists believed was impossible. The hadal snailfish, known scientifically as Pseudoliparis swirei, is the deepest living vertebrate ever recorded on Earth. It has been observed at depths of over 8,000 meters in the Mariana Trench. 8,000 meters. That is deeper than the summit of Kangchenjunga, the third tallest mountain on the surface of this planet, and it looks nothing like what you would expect. It is small, roughly 30 centimeters long, about the size of a large trout. Its body is soft and translucent, almost ghostly, with a pale pinkish-white coloration that gives it a fragile, almost ethereal appearance. It has no scales. Its bones are thin, incompletely formed, and partially uncalcified. Its skull is not fully closed. Under the extreme pressure of the hadal zone, having a rigid skeletal structure would be a death sentence. Rigid structures crack, collapse, fail. So, the snailfish solved this problem over millions of years of evolution by essentially becoming soft. It bends instead of breaking. But the softness is deceptive. Beneath that fragile exterior, the snailfish is one of the most pressure-adapted organisms ever studied. Its cell membranes have been restructured at the molecular level to remain fluid and functional under conditions that would cause the membranes of any surface creature to solidify and fail. Its proteins, the biological machinery that keeps every living cell running, have been re-engineered through genetic mutation to function optimally, not at the pressures of the surface, but at pressures more than 800 times greater. In March of 2025, scientists studying the genomes of 11 different deep-sea fish species, including the snailfish, made a discovery that stopped the research community cold. All 11 species, despite being only distantly related to one another, shared a single identical genetic mutation, one specific change in their DNA, present across every fish studied, that appears to be the key to surviving at extreme depth. That is not evolution working independently in different animals, that is convergent evolution. Multiple species arriving at the exact same biological solution to the exact same problem, completely separately over millions of years. The deep ocean did not just change these animals, it rewrote them at the genetic level, in the same way, independently, across species that had no contact with one another. That is how powerful the pressure of the hadal zone is as an evolutionary force. The hadal amphipod Hirondelia gigas. If the snailfish is the apex predator of the hadal zone, the top of a food chain that has almost nothing in it, then the amphipod is its foundation. Hirondelia gigas is a crustacean, a distant relative of the tiny shrimp-like creatures you might find in a tide pool or a freshwater stream. In most environments, amphipods are small, a few millimeters, almost invisible. In the hadal zone, they grow to lengths of up to 30 centimeters, nearly a foot long. This is deep-sea gigantism at work, the poorly understood phenomenon by which certain organisms in the deep ocean grow far larger than their surface relatives, likely due to the combination of cold temperatures, high pressure, and the metabolic advantages of larger body size in a food-scarce environment. Hirondelia gigas thrives at depths between 6,800 and 11,000 meters, the full range of the hadal zone, including the very bottom of the Challenger Deep. They are among the most successful colonizers of any deep ocean trench on Earth. Send a baited trap to the floor of almost any hadal environment in the world, and within hours, the camera will show Hirondelia gigas, dozens, sometimes hundreds of them, emerging from the sediment to feed. They are scavengers. Their primary food source is marine snow, the constant slow rain of dead organic matter falling from the world above, along with the occasional carcass of a larger animal that sinks to the trench floor. In a world with almost no food, nothing is wasted, but it is their armor that makes them truly extraordinary. At depths exceeding 6,000 meters, the pressure is so extreme that calcium carbonate, the material that most crustacean shells are made from, begins to dissolve. A normal crustacean at this depth would literally lose its shell to the chemistry of the water around it. Hirondelia gigas solved this problem in a way that no other known animal on Earth has ever done. It absorbs aluminum ions directly from the sediment on the trench floor and incorporates them into its exoskeleton, building a secondary layer of aluminum coating over its calcium carbonate shell. Like a living suit of metal armor, it is the only known species in the history of biological science to use aluminum for structural reinforcement. And it evolved this solution on its own, in the dark, at the bottom of the world, over millions of years of isolation. The Xenophyophore, the largest single cell on Earth. There is a creature in the Mariana Trench that holds a record no one talks about. Not the largest animal, not the fastest, not the most dangerous, but the largest single cell on Earth. Xenophyophores are protists, single-celled organisms, technically in the same broad category as the amoebas you might remember from a school biology lesson, but while a typical amoeba is microscopic, a xenophyophore can grow to 10 centimeters across, nearly 4 inches. A single cell, visible to the naked eye, sitting on the floor of the Mariana Trench. To understand why this is extraordinary, you need to understand what a cell is. Every living thing, every plant, every animal, every fungus is built from cells. The cells in your body are roughly 10 to 30 micrometers across. The neurons in your brain, the largest cells in the human body, reach perhaps 100 micrometers at most. A xenophyophore is 10 centimeters. That is approximately 1,000 times larger than the largest cell in your body in one cell. They build structures around themselves, protective shells constructed from whatever material is available on the trench floor, sand grains, sponge fragments, mineral particles, all cemented together with biological secretions. These structures function as microhabitats, creating tiny sheltered environments that other organisms, bacteria, small worms, juvenile crustaceans, use for shelter in an otherwise barren landscape. A single-celled organism creating an ecosystem, building architecture, engineering its environment at the bottom of the world. Scientists who study Xenophyophores describe them as one of the strangest organisms on Earth, not because of their size alone, but because they force a reconsideration of what a single cell can be. Everything we think we know about the limits of cellular biology, about what is and is not possible within the boundary of a single membrane, has to be reconsidered when you look at a xenophyophore. The plastic eaters, and then there is the discovery that no one wanted to make. In every major expedition to the Mariana Trench, from James Cameron's solo descent in 2012 to the most recent scientific missions in 2024 and 2025, researchers have found something that has no business being there. Plastic bags, plastic fragments, plastic fibers woven into the sediment at the very bottom of the deepest trench on Earth. In the July 2025 expedition that discovered the deepest animal community ever recorded, scientists also found plastic waste at depths approaching 10,000 meters. And in a finding that is as disturbing as anything else in this chapter, some of the amphipods living in the Mariana Trench, Hirundelia cagas, the creature we just discussed, the one that builds aluminum armor to survive conditions that should make life impossible, have been found with plastic in their digestive systems. They are eating it, not because they want to, but because in a world where food is so scarce that nothing goes to waste, a piece of plastic drifting down through 11 kilometers of ocean is indistinguishable from a piece of organic material. We have reached the bottom of the world. We have contaminated it, and the creatures that live there, creatures that evolved in complete isolation from humanity for millions of years, creatures that have survived every mass extinction, every ice age, every catastrophic event that has ever swept across the surface of this planet, are eating our garbage. This is what we have done to a place that fewer than 25 people have ever seen. There is one more creature we have not yet discussed. The one that, in many ways, defines what the Mariana Trench actually is, not as a place of biological curiosity, but as something genuinely ancient, genuinely alien, and genuinely beyond our full understanding. We will meet it in the next chapter, along with the humans, who risked everything to go down there and find it.
Ocean Explorer and belongs to NOAA. The ship is currently docked at Pier 46 in Seattle as it explores the waters off Washington, Oregon, and California.
Everything we have talked about so far, the pressure, the darkness, the creatures, the impossible biology, has been discovered from a distance. From research vessels on the surface, from remotely operated vehicles lowered on cables, from instruments that collect data and send it back up through kilometers of cold water to scientists who have never seen the trench with their own eyes. Only a handful of human beings have ever done what those instruments cannot. Only a handful have physically descended to the Challenger deep and looked at it directly. And the story of how they got there is, in its own way, as extraordinary as the trench itself. January 23, 1960. Two men climbed into a steel sphere barely large enough for both of them to stand upright. The sphere was attached to a float filled with aviation gasoline. Not water, not air, but gasoline. Chosen because it is buoyant enough to carry the weight of the metal below and incompressible enough not to collapse under pressure. The vessel was called Trieste, and the two men inside were Jacques Picard, a Swiss oceanographer, and Don Walsh, a United States Navy lieutenant who was 28 years old. They began their descent at 8 in the morning. It took them 4 hours and 48 minutes to reach the bottom. Partway down, one of the outer plexiglass windows cracked under the pressure, a sound by all accounts like a gunshot inside the capsule. Neither man turned back. They had no radio contact with the surface, no way to call for help, no rescue plan that could have reached them at that depth. They were, in every meaningful sense, completely alone. At 10,916 meters, the deepest point any human being had ever reached, Trieste settled into the sediment of the Challenger Deep. They stayed for 20 minutes, then they rose. The ascent took 3 hours and 15 minutes. When they broke the surface, the crew of the support ship had nearly given up hope. Picard and Walsh were the only people to have seen the bottom of the Mariana Trench with human eyes for the next 52 years. March 26, 2012, James Cameron, the filmmaker behind Titanic and Avatar, two of the highest-grossing films in the history of cinema, descended to the Challenger Deep alone in a vessel he had spent 7 years helping to design and build. The deep-sea Challenger was a one-man submersible, bright green, shaped like a torpedo standing upright. It was designed for one purpose: to go straight down as fast as possible and come straight back up. Cameron reached 10,898 meters, making him the first person to solo dive to the Challenger Deep, and the third human being in history to see it at all. He described the bottom as he found it: flat, featureless, covered in a fine grey sediment, eerily still. No dramatic geological formations, no visible large animals, just silence and dust at the end of the world. He spent 3 hours exploring before technical issues cut the dive short. 3 hours after 7 years of preparation. Then, between 2019 and 2022, something changed. Victor Vescovo, a retired United States Navy officer and businessman from Texas, descended to the Challenger Deep not once, but 15 times, 15 separate dives, in a vessel called the DSV Limiting Factor, reaching a record depth of 10,928 meters, deeper than any human had gone before. More importantly, he brought others with him, scientists, researchers. Don Walsh's own son, Kelly Walsh, who descended to the same point his father had reached 60 years earlier. What Vescovo's expeditions proved, more than any single scientific discovery, is that the Challenger Deep can be reached repeatedly, systematically, that it is not a one-time feat of extraordinary courage, but a place that can be studied, mapped, and returned to. That the age of real hadal exploration had finally, after 60 years, actually begun. We began this story with a question, not the question of what lives in the Mariana Trench, though we have answered some of that. Not the question of how deep it is, or how it was formed, or who has been there, though we have answered those too. The deeper question, the one underneath all the others. What does it mean that a place like this exists? The Mariana Trench is 11 kilometers deep. It has been there for tens of millions of years. Life has been living at the bottom of it for longer than our species has existed, longer than our genus has existed, adapting, evolving, solving problems that we did not know were problems until we invented the technology to go down and look. The snailfish that bends instead of breaking, the amphipod that builds metal armor from the ocean floor, the Xenopyophore that became the largest single cell on Earth because the rules that govern cell size at the surface simply do not apply down there. These are not anomalies. These are not exceptions to the story of life on Earth. They are the story of life on Earth. Life does not look for comfortable places to exist. It does not wait for ideal conditions. It finds a crack in a rock at the bottom of the world, in total darkness, under pressure that would destroy everything we have ever built, and it moves in. It has always done this. It always will. And then there is what we found that we did not want to find. Plastic at 10,000 meters, synthetic fibers woven into the sediment of the Challenger Deep. Fragments of the surface world drifting down through 11 kilometers of ocean to contaminate a place that fewer than 25 people have ever seen. The Mariana Trench is the most remote environment on this planet. It is separated from our world by crushing pressure, by miles of dark water, by physics that make it nearly impossible to reach. And we have already reached it, not with submersibles, not with cameras, but with our waste. This is not a comfortable fact, but it is an important one, because the Mariana Trench is not just a curiosity. It is not just a record, the deepest, the darkest, the most extreme. It is part of the same ocean that covers 71% of this planet, the same ocean that produces half the oxygen we breathe, the same ocean that regulates the climate, drives the weather, and makes this world habitable for every living thing that has ever existed on its surface. What happens at the bottom of the Mariana Trench does not stay at the bottom. It is connected to everything. In March of 2025, scientists confirmed that 89.4% of the microbial species in the hadal zone had never been documented before. Organisms whose biology we do not yet understand, organisms whose adaptations, the genetic tools they use to survive pressure, cold, and starvation, may one day inform medicine, materials, science, and our understanding of how life could survive in environments beyond this planet. The Mariana Trench may hold answers to questions we have not yet thought to ask. That is what unexplored places do. They wait. Jacques Picard and Don Walsh descended to the bottom of the world in 1960 and came back with a simple observation that stunned the scientific community. There was a flatfish on the seafloor, a living animal sitting in the sediment of the Challenger Deep, doing what animals do. That single observation, a fish at the bottom of the world, changed the way science thought about where life could exist. It was the beginning of everything that followed. Every expedition, every discovery, every species, every question we are still trying to answer today. It started because two men in a steel ball chose not to turn back when the window cracked. That is what exploration does. It changes what we think is possible. The Mariana Trench will not give up its secrets quickly. It is too deep, too remote, too vast to be understood in a generation or two of scientific effort. There is more down there, more species, more chemistry, more biology than everything we have found so far combined. We have been to the bottom, we have looked, we have brought back fragments of an answer to a question that is still mostly unasked, and we will go back, because that is what human beings do when they find a door they have not yet opened. They open it. Thank you for spending this time with us. Genuinely, the Mariana Trench is one of the most extraordinary places on this planet, and you chose to sit with it, to listen, to let it matter. That is not a small thing. There is a version of the world where no one cares about what lives at the bottom of the ocean, where the darkness down there stays dark and unexamined and forgotten. You are not part of that world. Neither are we. We will be back with another story from the deep, from the ancient, from the places this planet keeps to itself until someone decides to look. If this is the kind of story you want to follow, subscribe, leave a comment, tell us what you want to explore next. The abyss is deep, and we have only just begun.